y'all know. We'll put it out through the newspaper. But it's not something that we have any control over whatsoever. And in fact, we did not find out the final versions until very shortly before the election to be able to let everybody know, because it was changing so much so fast.
Right. And I understand that that's not something that you all control. I guess my question more or less is, when do you find out, and how do we go about
Like I said, you know, we will, just as soon as we will find out, Ms. Moen will send you a copy of what we get, which is what we have to go by, and then we try and let the citizens know, try and get them educated on what is going to be required. We also had things that we made for each district that showed what the requirements were, so that all the people that were working the poll books, when you came in and told them what your name was and gave them some sort of ID, so that they would be educated enough to know what to ask you if what you presented to them was not the right type of an ID. You know, and we did everything we could to try and make sure every citizen got a chance to vote.
And it did work quite well. And
the majority of voters have their voter ID card.
Right.
It's not a big, you know, very few.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One last thing.
Yes,
I see Dr. Killo, and I haven't asked. I did say one more thing, but I'm going to probably have to work with the electoral board and the school board to see if we can go back to the gymnasium side.
That is not something I don't think that we're going to be able to do if you stop and realize that Caroline County practically has 12-month programs that are going on.
In the school? In
the schools. They don't want the gym used because they don't want people walking across the floor, you know, and destroying that. Let's face it, women going to work in the morning are going to have on high heels. They don't want you across that gym floor. And I don't know if that many women that early in the morning, they're going to want to take their shoes off to walk up to a voting machine to be able to vote.
But
At one point, we had come to you and said that we wanted to see about splitting the district.
Yeah, I got.
And at that time, you did tell us that you would consider doing it, but you wanted us to wait until after this election.
Right.
So we're kind of holding you at your word that you said you would not be opposed to doing it.
Okay.
You would be.
I considered it, and all of the people that I saw at the polls, 75% of the Mattapanai district was always at the high school. The folks from Milford that are new, they're just going to the high school. But everybody that I talked to said they didn't want to split. They wanted to stay at the high school because they were used to that.
Yes,
and
sir. But we've also received some, I won't say correspondence, but some verbal wordage from different people that said they would like to have it moved. So you kind of got a split going on here.
Well, trust me, I'm pretty sure I've heard more than you have, and
I'm sure you have.
It's all of these people that are around here.
But for what it's worth, I kind of worked this up. So you would have people down here in this area that can make a straight shot up this building, as opposed to coming up and going over. You would have all your West Mattapanai people that sit there right here to the high school with no problem whatsoever. So it's this group of people down through here that we're hearing from that feel like, you know, hey, we're the forgotten ones.
They're not forgotten. It's the people that are just north of there who don't really want to go somewhere else. They've been going to the high school for 20 years, and they want to continue to go from the high school.
We've always got change going on. So
Just because we have it, we don't have to do it. That's another story. We will work on that separately.
Yeah, y'all take that argument somewhere else, okay?
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't think the rest of the board wants to be involved in that argument. Thank you. Appreciate you.
I'm glad I could help you on
All right. Next item on the agenda is appointments. Social Services Board, Mr. Taylor.
yes, I do. I have, for the Port Royal District appointment, Mrs. Joyce Johnson, for Stonewall Jackson Road in Whitford, Virginia. I don't have her number, the number of her house address, but I will provide that for staff.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a
Mrs.
second?
Joyce Johnson.
Is there a second to Mr. Taylor's?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we appoint Mrs. Joyce Johnson to the Social Services Board, representing the Port Royal District. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay, and the motion is carried. Industrial Development Authority for Bowling Green, Mattapanai, and Reedy Church District. Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to once again reappoint Mr. Craig Lewis for the Bowling Green District.
Mr. Thomas?
Mrs. Myers has said she would be willing to serve again, so I appoint her.
Mr. Underwood?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Mordecai Anderson, Jr. to the Reedy Church District.
One big motion.
All right, is there one, yes, one motion to appoint,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Craig Lewis, Ms. Maria Mize, and Mr. Mordecai Andrews to the IDA Board.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we appoint Mr. Lewis, Ms. Mize, and Mr. Andrews. I'll reappoint them to the Industrial Authority. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay, and the motion is carried. Consent agenda. Is there an item on the consent agenda that any board member wishes to pull? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the addendum that was added this evening?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Taylor, that we approve the consent agenda as amended this evening. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay, and the motion is carried. Can we discuss item 9? Proposed participation in King George County Joint Land Use Study for Naval Support Facility at Dahlgren.
I'll try. Mr. Chairman, we received a request from King George for the joint land use study. It's similar to the land use study that we're doing with AP Hill. They're not asking, they'll be handling all, it will be, staff time would be our in-kind match. They're the grantee, so it wouldn't be any cash contribution from us. We were asked, there was several counties that had joined King George that were asked to participate. Mr. Finchem's indicated that he or our staff member could attend those if the board felt it was necessary. We certainly don't have to. It's your call if you think it would be helpful for us to be involved in that planning process over there with Dahlgren.
Discussion? Comments?
I'm just wondering, why are we doing this? I mean, it's not like it's AP Hill and it's close to, they're 15 miles into King George. So, I mean, if somebody could say why there's a good reason, I would say sure. But if there's no good reason, I mean, are we just doing it to be nice because we like them, or?
We just asked of King George to try to include Westmoreland, Caroline, Town of Colonial Beach, along with Charles County, Maryland, into their study.
I actually thought it was interesting they didn't include the town of Port Royal, but that was just my take on the letter.
I mean, I just don't see a reason to do it. Not that I'm against it. I just don't see a reason to do it. And is there something I'm missing? It seems kind of far. But.
The only thing that I can envision is the fact that we've constantly talked about the regional cooperation, and they're just trying to extend the olive branch to include us into this process. Now, my concern is, to be honest, that then they may expect for us to do the same if we start doing studies down closer to that Port Royal area and land studies and what have you. Because, as you know, that Board of Supervisor members has been here and spoke at public hearings in opposition to certain things that are taking place in that area. So, you know, I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like I do want to cooperate with them, because if they're extending the olive branch in order to work with the county, I think we should do what we can. On the other hand, I don't want to do it, and maybe they're thinking that we'll reciprocate and ask them to do the same thing if we do land studies around the King George area.
But it's
And we
again,
do have a pretty good sized boundary with King George there.
I mean, I'm all for working with King George, but it's the equivalent analogy would be if we're doing something in Carmel Church
Yeah, I understand.
and we invite King George to participate in
understand
that, it
completely.
just doesn't make sense.
Unless that has something to do with the noise levels that will be generated at Dahlgren. I don't know whether that's possible, you know. So,
I mean,
yeah.
am I
So
the
that
only
may
one?
be-
You guys see a reason? Or?
Yeah, I guess my concern is, I'm not sure just what the benefits are. There may be benefits that we don't know.
Right.
And I guess if you say that you aren't going to be a part of it, then when you do find out what those benefits are, it's a little late. I guess the only other thing I might add is that Mr. Fincham does not have a problem, going to the meeting and finding out. And then if we determine later that it's no benefit for us, I'm pretty sure we can very easily back out of it. But,
That's a good
well,
point. I was just thinking of that
can we
myself.
back
the fact
out?
that- I mean, we don't sign a contract or anything.
well,
but
I mean,
we
yeah, we're not
participate.
putting up
We just-
any funds or anything like that. So I would see no reason why we would have
What are
to
they gonna
stay
do
a
if
part
we
of the
do?
study
Beat us up?
if we found out that the study was not beneficial
Yeah, I
to
saw
us.
it. I saw it back in November.
I don't know. I don't want Mr. Fincham
Mr. Underwood,
and
you
King
have a
George.
question?
I need
My only concern, I would like to know up front what the benefit is to the county. I mean, I don't think we should ever do anything without understanding the ramifications, if there are any, of participation. Certainly, we don't want to do experimental things, so I'm just not sure the purpose and the benefit, and could there be any consequences?
If our current joint land use study with Fort A.P. Hill is any indication of the process that will be pursued in King George with Dahlgren, the military installation wants to be as inclusive as possible in terms of neighboring communities. King George is actually participating in the Fort A.P. Hill joint land use study because of the proximity of Fort A.P. Hill to the Rappahannock River in King George County. So I think you're correct. That boundary of our military installation is closer to King George than perhaps the Dahlgren facility is to Caroline County. I think they are looking at this as the processes as overlapping because you have two federal installations in such close proximity to one another. Mr. Seeley may be able to speak about some of the public activities at Dahlgren. There may be some synergies there in terms of military activities, but I think you're correct. We are further removed from Dahlgren than King George is to Fort A.P. Hill. And if there's a potential for greater noise levels or something like that that might impact Northern Caroline because of the overlapping operations of the facilities, maybe that's an issue. I'm not sure that without going and hearing the proposal, at least initially, that I see that issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, one of the biggest issues right now with NSWC Dahlgren is the actual reconstruction of the 301 River Bridge from Maryland to Virginia, and whether they go north or south. If they go downriver, it impacts the base in a fairly new facility that's been built. If they go upriver, there's a marina on the other side. Maryland has bought a very wide entrance for the 301 construction, either way it goes, to actually widen that bridge and actually facilitate more traffic. And I think from that perspective, the impact to us may be traffic, commerce, the ability, once that bridge is wider, a lot of this is going to fall into that study because of the impact it has either way they go. And I think that is probably why this is being looked at are we willing to participate so that we understand what that is going to mean when that takes place, because it's going to have big impact.
Yeah, I see in the letter, it does talk about the local economy in Caroline and other locations. So I think what Mr. Seeley has explained reaffirms that.
Well, but
maybe it may be good that if we at least send Mr. Fincham to the meetings and accept to this point and see where it goes, to see what it's going to accomplish and how Caroline County can be impacted from it. And again, if we don't see that it's impacting the county in at all, we can just pull him back and say, okay, we don't attend any more meetings, and we can withdraw from the study committee.
Can we do that on the contingency that Charles County, Maryland is part of this? Because, I mean, as we all know, as a result of the Civil War, the water belongs to Maryland and not Virginia. So Maryland's got to build the bridge and not Virginia, theoretically. So it's more what they do, and we'll have to respond to what they do. So if there's no Maryland representatives on here, we're kind of not doing what we should. But if Charles County, Maryland's there, that's fine. I don't really see a problem in go ahead and doing it. My question was what was the purpose for asking us?
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to go ahead either to be a participant in the study committee or not to be a participant in the study committee?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we participate in the study.
Okay.
Again, I think it's just, for our purposes, it's for information and what impact it could potentially have on Caroline.
Okay. Second to that motion?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that we do participate in the study. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion is carried.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Kind of related. When is our joint meeting with King George and King and Queen? Isn't that in the next week or two?
January.
January?
It's like the 15th of January. It's every year at the same time.
Okay, I
The
thought I
whole
saw
northern
that.
neck.
It's at the place in Tappahannock.
Essex. Lowry's.
Yes, always in January.
Yeah.
No, it's a local supervisors meeting. Caroline, King George, King and Queen. The one in Essex. Yeah, it's at the one.
At Lowry.
Yeah, the one.
Lowry, but I mean, it includes a bunch of Gloucester.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
right.
I mean, it's more. Okay. January 3rd.
Board will take a
All right.
15-minute recess.
We need to address it then too.
We'll reconvene the Board of Supervisors meeting. The next item on the agenda is public comment period. Ms. Hall, if you would read the rules on public comment as well as the public hearings, because that will be the next item on the agenda after public comments.
Public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. The public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or a question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and voting district, if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. County administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired. Copies of the detailed rules are located on the back table.
Thank you. At this point, we will now open the public comment period. If there's anyone who would like to address the board on any issue that's not a public hearing, please come forward, state your name and your voting district. If there's anyone who would like to address the board on any issue not covered under a public hearing, please come forward. One last call. If there's anyone who would like to address the board on any issue not on a public hearing, please come forward. Hearing no public comments, the public comment period is closed. The next item on the agenda is public hearings, and the first public hearing that we have this evening is Art Doswell Jr. and T.E. Campbell, D.E. Campbell, and R.S. Campbell owner, Luckstone Corporation applicant. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your first public hearing tonight is SPEX 09-2012. R. Doswell Jr., Campbell, owner, Luckstone Corporation applicant. They're requesting a special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 4, Section 5.3 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance on tax map 71-A-24, containing approximately 451.77 acres. The subject property is located on the west side of Richmond Turnpike, approximately 1.2 miles south of the intersection of Sparta Road in the Mattaponi voting district. The proposed use is sand and gravel extraction and sales, which would be an expansion of the current Luckstone facility already in existence on Route 301 South. The applicant is requesting approval of a special exception permit to allow the expansion of a sand and gravel, existing sand and gravel extraction to approximately 451 acres of land to the south of the current Luckstone Corporation facility. Luckstone presently has an active mining operation on the adjacent parcel to the north and is seeking to extract additional material from the additional southern parcel. There is no intention to move any of the existing equipment or facilities, and the application would utilize the current access to U.S. Route 301. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on this request. There was one property owner who did request opposition, was not related to the property itself, rather related to a situation between that property owner and one of the employees of Luckstone. There are several letters in your file in support of this request. The Planning Commission, after consideration of the public hearing at its October 17th meeting, voted to forward this application to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval subject to the 11 conditions that are contained in your staff report. Those 11 conditions mirror the conditions currently in existence on the current Luckstone operation to ensure that, in fact, this is an expansion of the existing facility subject to the same terms and conditions. With that, I'll address any questions the board may have.
Board members have any questions of Mr. Fincham?
I'd just like to clarify a statement. Mr. Fincham, you said this was an expansion, and it's really, the footprint that they're using is really the same. They've just basically used up one area, so now they're moving to another area?
It's material related, yes, sir.
So it's kind of semantics, but it's not really, they're not growing the operation. They're going to have the same size operation
Yes, sir.
in a different location?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other
Thank
questions of Mr. Fincham? All right, thank you, Mr. Fincham. Doesn't seem to be any questions. At this point, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come and address the board in opposition to or in favor of this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Riley. I'm the Land Use and Development Manager for Luckstone. We're based in Goochland County, Virginia. I'd like to thank Mr. Fincham for his presentation. I think he's covered given you a good summary of the application. Would like to highlight a few points, provide a little bit more detail on some of the portions of the application. Just to give you a little bit of background on Luckstone. Luckstone is a third-generation, family-owned Virginia business. Been in operation since 1923. We presently have 15 mining operations in Virginia, one in North Carolina. And we've been operating in Caroline County since 1998. We've been operating in our current location since 2004. And the reason for our application this evening is that the reserves at our current operation are severely limited. We've mined just about all the material that we can out of that existing facility. As Mr. Fincham mentioned, there are adequate reserves on the Campbell property to our south, and we are not planning, as he mentioned, to expand our existing operation, our production capacity at all. We're simply asking that we be allowed to mine additional area to access additional reserves. That material will be processed via the existing plant, and that way we won't be producing any more volume at the plant. We currently produce on average approximately 300,000 tons of material a year. And just to give you an idea of the impact that the facility has on the county, we generate approximately $215,000 a year in direct tax revenue to the county. That's real estate, that's the county's portion of sales tax, and that's also machinery and tools tax. We employ 9 full-time persons at the facility. 7 of those individuals are residents of Caroline County. If we are to be approved this evening, we would be adding an additional position at the plant, and we would do that almost as soon as we get going on the new property. In addition to the tax revenue that we generate, we spend approximately a little bit in excess of $300,000 a year in the community, be it for fuel for our vehicles. We buy as much of our tools, parts, and supplies locally as we can that are available, obviously patronizing local businesses. So we do have a pretty big impact from that standpoint as well, the revenue that and monies that we put into the community. And as Mr. Fincham mentioned, there were some letters in your package, one of those being from Beasley Concrete. And I just wanted to point out that Beasley and Oldcastle are 2 of our biggest customers at this location. They're located in the Milford Industrial Park, just around the corner from us. And if for some reason we were not to be able to continue to operate at this location, just those 2 particular businesses would be forced to purchase our product elsewhere. And right now, the closest for them to purchase a similar material is actually outside of the county. So that's tax revenue that's generated by our plant currently that would be heading out of the county. It's also would be a longer haul for them, more truck traffic on the road, and a higher cost of business, frankly, for them. So we feel like in that way, we are certainly a benefit to the community, and we'd like to continue to do so. As I mentioned, we are fortunate to be able to have these additional reserves in close proximity, that we're able to transport the material all off-road. As we extract the material, we will be loading it onto haul trucks, and those haul trucks will be carrying it from the extraction area to the plant, and that'll all be internal. There'll be no access to Route 301. The production capacity, as I mentioned, at our current facility will not increase, so the volume of truck traffic coming in and out of the plant will stay the same. Obviously, depending on market conditions, that production capacity will stay essentially the same. Just a quick information on the extraction process itself. We don't do any blasting at this facility. It's all done via tracked equipment that accesses the material by stripping the topsoil, and also strip the overburden material, which is just the level of dirt in between the topsoil and sand and gravel. Sand and gravel is extracted again via tracked equipment, loaded onto the haul truck, and again carried over to the plant and processed there. Also, just as you have some exhibits in your package, when we go in to access the reserves, we're not going to go in and strip out the entire area that's shown as extraction on those exhibits. We mine small areas at a time, and as we go, we remediate the areas that we have mined, which means we take the overburden topsoil that's been stockpiled from the mining areas, fill the areas that are being mined, and as we're complete, we regrade, reseed, and then replant. I should mention that both the property that we're currently operating on, as well as the property that is part of this permit this evening, we lease those properties. We do not own them. And our agreements with both of the landowners are that when we finish our operations there, that the property will be left and reforested. So basically, we'll be, after we reseed, we replant with pine trees, and that those properties go back into forestation. Obviously, the remediation is an important part of this process for us. Obviously, we strive to leave the property better than we found it when we started operations. One of the things that comes with sand and gravel mining is oftentimes there is some ponds that are left on the property. It is one of the conditions in our current operating conditions, as well as the conditions that are being proposed for this property, that no more than 10% of the property that's mined will be left in ponds. So the majority of it will go back into a forested state, and that property will be obviously returned back to the existing landowners for their use. Obviously, the ponds do create some habitat for wildlife, and actually we have won some awards in past for our reclamation efforts in our King William plant. Obviously, we are an industrial operation. We're very cognizant of potential impacts that we could have on our neighbors. We have reached out to all of our neighbors who are in close proximity to make sure that they understood our proposal and that they were able to voice any concerns or questions that they had about our application. We haven't heard any significant issues from our neighbors, and as we do at all of our facilities, we'll continue to keep in close communication with them as if any issues do arise. We're always happy to address those and address them as quickly as possible. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have about the application specifically.
Mr. Raleigh, I appreciate that, and if you would just maybe have a seat down front, and I'll see if there's any other comments in favor of or opposition to, then you can come back and the board could ask any questions. Is there anyone else who would like to address this issue in favor of or in opposition to this application? Is there anyone else who would like to express their opinion in opposition or in favor of this application? Does the board have any questions of Mr. Raleigh? No, we'll just go ahead and probably still open. Do you have any questions, Mr. Black, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Underwood, Mr. Seeley, Mr. Thomas, in your district? Go ahead.
Mr. Raleigh, thank you for your presentation and being here. And again, thank you for being here. And again, as I stated when Mr. Fincham made his presentation, you're not really expanding. You're just using the similar footprint somewhere else. You're cleaning up the existing one, and you're going to restore that the way it was. So you're really going to have the exact same site.
That's correct. We'll be finishing our remediation work on the existing site, and then the new material will be accessed on the new property and processed in the same manner within the same footprint as the current facility.
And I've talked to a few of the neighbors, not necessarily, well, they are ones that did not provide letters. So I didn't hear any bad comments. I don't think, Mr. Fincham, we've had any complaints from Luckstone. So we've had no complaints, regarding the operation. You've been a good corporate citizen in the county. So I think all that's good. Now let me ask you my questions. Because you said you're going to add one more employee, right?
Yes.
And that'll get your total up to
10.
10. And you're aware that if you get to more than 17, you'll have to update your sewer system, your wastewater?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
10 is your last expansion. Adding this one more is it?
I don't know. I mean, there's always a possibility that there could be market conditions that could potentially impact the volume of production. I don't anticipate that we're going to add that many add enough employees to get us to that level. But we do understand, per the comments from the health department, that if we do exceed that level of 17, that we do need to evaluate the septic system that's on site.
Well, I'd like you to get close to that number, which is another story. Okay, it has nothing to do with your application. But I noticed you in the presentation, you have $213,000. You said was the county revenue.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to give you the breakdown, just unless you don't have it. But it's $50,000 in machinery and tools, $155,000 in sales tax, $8,700 in real estate tax.
Yes, sir.
That sounds right to you?
Yes.
You got 451 acres, and you pay $8,000 in real estate tax.
I don't assess the property, so I can't tell you exactly how that number is reached.
Okay.
But that's something that
You feel that's kind of low too, don't you?
I think it's probably appropriate.
All right. All right. We've got Mrs. Carter, and we'll discuss that. But that's it. And if we don't give you this application, not that the board would be, well, whatever. If we don't give you this particular application, you'll basically have to close down because there's nothing else you can do there.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions by board members? We'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Rowley. All right. Is there a motion to either approve or deny this special exception request?
Mr. Chairman,
We'll make
is there
a
no
motion.
discussion? Oh, all right.
We'll make a motion.
Yeah, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve special exception 9/2012 for Luckstone Corporation.
Is there a second? Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we approve special exception 09-2012. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. I had to be careful because I've learned I've got 3 employees of the 7 from Caroline that work over there, so I had to be sure I protected those people.
You'll be hearing from Mrs. Carter, though, before you go.
Mrs. Carter says, "Don't get into her business."
You'll be hearing from Mrs. Carter.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a proposed ordinance, zoning ordinance text amendment, text 08-2012 and text 12-2012, to add a definition for community administrative office and to allow community administrative office buildings in the R1 zoning district. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next 2 public hearings were actually items of which you held the first reading at your November 15th meeting. These 2 amendments relate to the creation of a definition for a community administrative building, which would allow POAs, HOAs to have community offices as a by right use, and would create in the R1 district, and would create the definition for that type of building. If you remember, at your November 15th, we had proposed a cleanup of definitions and these same uses throughout our zoning ordinance. At that meeting, the board advertised to go forward with the public hearing with the definition and allow this as a use only in the R1 district, subject to a minimum of 500 residential dwelling units before a community could have one of these types of facilities. The 2 amendments before you tonight reflect the actions of the board at your November 15th meeting. It does create the definition for the community administrative building, and it would allow this as a by right use in the R1 district only at this time, with a minimum of 500 dwelling units. The remaining text amendments we will bring back to you with the changes requested by the board at one of your 2 January meetings. Since these are related items, you can have the 1 public hearing to cover both amendments.
Before we open public hearing? 5, yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. The board does not seem to have any questions of you right now. We will now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition the proposed zoning ordinance text amendments that have been discussed and described by Mr. Fincham? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the proposed zoning ordinance text amendments? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the zoning ordinance text amendments? Hearing no comment, the public hearing is declared closed. The board have any questions of Mr. Fincham, or does the board wish to go ahead and act on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Black.
if there's no discussion, I'd like to make the motion that we approved zoning ordinance text amendments 08, 2012, and 12, 2012.
Separate motion. Separate motion.
Separate motions. Okay,
Okay,
so
do it.
let's go ahead and do 08, 2012.
Is there a second to Mr. Black's motion?
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we approve proposed zoning ordinance of text amendment text 08-2012. Discussion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Mr. Black, you'd like to handle the other one?
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to make a motion that we approved text ordinance 12-2012.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we approve the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment text 12-2012. Discussion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is item 6, an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of Caroline County, Virginia, electing to assume the power to consider petitions for the creation of community development authorities. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. You have said it all. There's not much to this ordinance. It merely allows the board to receive these petitions. Should you pass this ordinance in the future, if there's an economic development project that requires this type of funding, creation of the CDA, they would then petition you with particulars of their project that you would then be able to review and determine whether or not you wish to pursue it. Tonight, there is nothing, no project with which you would have to contend or consider.
All right. Questions of Mr. Wilson? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does not appear to be any questions. At this point, we will now declare the public hearing open on an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of Caroline County, Virginia, electing to assume the power to consider petitions for the creation of community development authorities. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or opposition to this ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this ordinance? Mr. Thompson, good to see you this evening.
Good to see you. I have comments.
Tommy, how's your daughter? Good. Good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the board, my name is Tommy Thompson. I'm a partner in Carmel Church Station, the mixed-use transit-oriented development being prepared to the east and west of Interstate 95, south of Route 207, and east of Route 1. I'd like to speak in favor of the proposed Community Development Authority. Over the years, we have become very aware of the benefits of a CDA for advancing important projects, both for the benefit of the development and the benefit of the county. We see the following very clear benefits. A CDA provides a funding mechanism for otherwise difficult to finance infrastructure for a project that can help accelerate or jumpstart the timing of a project getting started, as well as the phasing and density of the project. This benefits the project and benefits the county by bringing tax dollars to the county sooner rather than later. A CDA can be a great marketing tool to bring high-quality, desired development and projects to the county. A major user can look more seriously at Caroline County, knowing that there is a financing mechanism for needed infrastructure. 3, a CDA gives the county an infrastructure financing plan for desired projects. And the CDA debt is not the debt of the county per the Virginia CDA statute. The private land within the CDA district is the security for the bond. 4, the county never loses control by approving the establishment of this authority, since specific projects still need the approval of the board before they can go forward. The approval sought tonight is simply adding a tool to the county's arsenal. The actual use of that tool is always at the sole discretion of the board. We believe that a CDA may one day be a critical tool